There are two questions that I see from new extension developers more than any others. How do I protect my code? And how do I protect sensitive data like API keys in my extension? Now that second one is becoming an even more common issue for extensions using cloud-based generative AI. We're back! In the last episode, we looked at helping users find your extension on the Chrome Web Store. Today, I want to take a look at a more technical topic. Over on Reddit, jferd1337, or Lee, I see what you did there, asked this great question about how to protect your extension source code. On a fundamental level, it's useful to just sort of set expectations for what's achievable. JavaScript is a high-level language, it's usually just-in-time compiled, and so it's always going to be very easy to see the code that's running on your machine. I can show you here. So I have the Action API demo. This is an extension we publish on the Chrome Web Store. And I can easily open DevTools for the service worker. I can go to the sources tab, and you can see the source code for this extension. So it's really not hidden. In fact, it's really easy to get to. So what can you do if you're concerned about this? Well, there's actually some relevant Chrome Web Store policy. So let me open that up. We have these code readability requirements, and these tell us what we can and can't do in terms of actually changing the code. As you can see here, it says developers must not obfuscate code, so it's very explicit that obfuscation is not allowed, but it does also say that minification is allowed, including the following forms, and it gives some examples for what we can do. Now that difference can sound confusing, but I think actually in practice it's really easy to see the difference, so let me go ahead and show you. So I have this tool here. This lets me basically write some code, and then I can see the uglified version. So if I write a function, and then we can call this hello world maybe, and take two parameters, so first and second, and then let's just log the first argument to the console. And you can see that the minified output is somewhat similar, but it's slightly shorter. It's removed some of the white space. This argument name has been renamed, so it's much shorter. And so this has saved some space. It's made the code slightly harder to use, but it's still very easy for us to read and for our review team to review this code. Now if I copy this code and go to an obfuscation tool and then run this through, you can see this is like completely different. This is like encoded in weird ways, and it's very hard to see what's going on. And this is the sort of thing that we don't allow because this is just far too hard to review. So the difference is completely night and day. You might also think that viewing the source code of an extension is something the browser should prevent, and we do have policies enterprises can use to do that. But since JavaScript isn't compiled into a binary format, the code is always somewhere on the machine. If a user has administrative rights, they will always be able to find the code on disk if they look hard enough, regardless of what we do. One thing I will add is that I think new developers often worry about this too much. I totally get it. If your source code is accessible, it makes it easier for competitors to pop up, and losing any users at an early stage can be significant. But in practice, I do find users are often loyal to high-quality extensions as long as you keep addressing feedback and adding new functionality. JS Fiddler X asked about how to keep API keys safe, and actually already in the question there's a hint at the answer. Setting up cloud functions, or really any sort of cloud API for your extension, is the most robust solution. So let me sort of show you how this would work. So you have sort of three pieces, right? You have your extension, and then you have a server that you could set up, and then you have whatever API you want to call. So let's say the Gemini API. And traditionally what you might do is if you want your extension to call the API, you could just have your extension make a request directly to the API. And this is great, but to do this, you actually need the API key to be in your extension, and then it's really easy to extract like we've said. But what we can actually do instead is we can have your extension make a request to the server, and then your server can make a request to the Gemini API. And this is good because it means only your server needs to know your API key. Your server can make the authenticated request. And it's also really easy for you to add rate limits or block requests. Now, of course, not everyone can or wants to set up a server, but unfortunately, as soon as you're putting an API key into your source code, it can be extracted. This is the case even if you're trying to use clever tricks to hide it. It's always going to be visible to someone determined enough, for example, if you go to the Network tab in DevTools. Your best bet in these cases is to set limits on the keys where possible and to really carefully monitor the usage. But again, I wouldn't recommend it, just avoid that wherever possible. I would also say in the AI case, you can use some built-in models, so maybe look at whether you even need to be calling a server API in the first place. I'm curious if you in the comments have your own advice on how to solve these problems. Feel free to drop something below and we might talk about some of the suggestions in future episodes. If you want advice from the community on these sorts of topics, I'd really recommend reading our mailing list. There's a link in the description. There's a really active community there that can help answer your questions, and our team also takes a look at that mailing list, so we can jump in if there's something that we can help with. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. I'm very curious what you think of this new series and what topics you'd like to see, so let us know. Until next time.